Now we're talking about legal issues, and actually we're going to have a whole section that's about law and regulations. But right now what we're looking at is the drivers that you have to understand if you're going to build a security program. So we're kind of overviewing some of the legal issues that we'll get in deeper later. So I talked about due diligence, which means we got to find out what we need to be afraid of and what we need to fix. Due care means we got to fix it. Now, the legal system works on something that's called the prudent person rule. It used to be the prudent man rule, but it's not politically correct. So now it's the prudent person rule. And what this means is, let's say that I'm brought into court because I didn't carry out my corporation security properly. It negatively affected one of my partners and cost them money. Now, if I go into court, and they say, well, what did you do? If I can produce that I have a security policy, that I have a security program, that I've done my due diligence and due care, I'm acting responsible. Like I said, you can't have 100% security, so some things just happen in life that you do your best to protect yourself. But if I go in there and I don't produce that I have a policy or a security program or any of these things that I was supposed to do, even if I'm missing one of these things, then I would be irresponsible. I wouldn't be acting right, and that's how I would get a judgment against me. And how they do that is they have this person who doesn't actually exist, this imaginary person called the prudent person rule. So they think about, well, look at what I did and compare it to what a responsible person did and compare the two. So, and that's how it works a lot in civil cases. So whenever you hear the prudent person rule, it's a legal concept which indicates how you're going to be judged on the level of effort that you gave to provide the necessary protection. So it's an important concept. It depends on where you are in security, especially if you're dealing with forensics or investigation. It definitely comes into play. So we have, this is a subjective thing, but law can be subjective. They're going to be interpreted, just like regulations are interpreted. And so we need to take the right steps to make sure that we are delivering the right amount of security. Now, we talked about regulations, and a lot of people, when they hear regulations, they sigh, they hate them. But as a security person, you should love regulations because that's mainly what's keeping you in work. It's not mainly, but it's a big thing that keeps you in work. If you've been in security as long as I have, you've constantly had to fight with management to educate them on putting security in place. And now, since the government is saying you have to put security in place, that fight is a lot easier, especially when you have regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley that could put a CEO or a CFO into jail or charge them millions of dollars in fees. So there's a lot of regulations that keep coming down, but why are they coming down? Why do we have to have these regulations continue? Because companies and organizations are not doing what they're supposed to do. If you study these regulations, a lot of the stuff was already on the books. Like Sarbanes-Oxley, a lot of that stuff was already on the books, it just was not enforced. So it's just like a parent enforcing, making companies do what they're supposed to do. So people who have to be compliant with it, not necessarily a lot of fun. But security people should really appreciate it because it makes their life a lot easier. Again, why do we need regulations? Because of the corruption that has taken place before. Our United States is getting much more serious about privacy of like health information or personal information. Europe has always been way ahead of the United States in protecting this type of information. And as I said before, once something affects the economy, that's really a big wake-up call. And Enron is a company that most people know of, but there's a lot of companies that were doing the same thing as Enron was doing, which is they were moving their expenses over to profits. They were, basically cooking the books. And so now we have to have regulations that ensure that companies don't do that anymore, and it's actually raised the cost of doing business, but that's where we are today.